And I want to welcome everyone to this town hall meeting, the third in a series that has been looking at artificial turf and natural grass playing fields. The first town hall was on March 26th, and we focused then on safety and artificial turf, looking at a wide range of factors, including chemical contaminants in turf, microplastic pollutants, those sorts of things. We had representatives from the Synthetic Turf Council. We had leading national scientists. We had environmentalists and about 150 people in the audience. It was a very robust, rich discussion, which is archived on YouTube, and I'm happy to share the link to that. The second event was April 9th.
We give Meredith that whole bath.
And again, guys, when you come on, please mute yourselves.
Taking the ensuite.
I'm going to quickly do this so that we don't have background noise. The second town hall on April 9th picked up on the first to look at the relative merits of synthetic turf versus natural grass playing fields. Both of these two town halls, the first two, revolved around a very simple framing that I provided, which was in our community here in Chevy Chase in Washington, D.C., like communities around the country, we want access to reliably playable athletic fields for school and recreational sports programs. And at the same time, we want to make sure that those fields are safe. And I think that's a common thing, right? A demand for fields and an equal demand that those fields be safe. And that led to the focus of those two town halls that I mentioned to you. The first on safety, the other on playability broadly, and it looked at artificial turf and natural grass fields across a number of dimensions. Sun participated in that second one, and Jerad gave us a statement for that second one. Those two have led to tonight, which is going to be dedicated exclusively, as we have billed this, to natural grass playing fields. Coming out of the second, it was clear that there was more we needed to do to look at the viability of natural grass playing fields in light of many communities opting for synthetic turf fields. Here in Washington, D.C., in the area that I represent as an advisory neighborhood commissioner, I've put this in the background, and many people on the call already understand this, but just for context, there are two proposed large-scale installations of artificial turf amounting to almost 5 acres within 3 blocks of my house and the district that I represent. One is to renovate a ball field at a local elementary school, and the other is to create a multi-sport complex by a private school in Washington on property it's leasing from another institution in our district. We already have in the district I represent, also just 3 blocks away, another very large athletic program with more than 5 acres of artificial turf already on the ground. That would mean that if we add the 2 new installations, we would have more than 10 acres within 3 or 4 blocks of one another in terms of the facilities. Given the concerns that have come about, particularly in the last several years regarding chemical contaminants in turf, namely PFAS, as well as microplastic pollutants, like many places around the country, you are all veterans of these conversations and these debates. Our community has raised lots of questions about, again, safety. At the same time, about playability. And to be honest with you, the District of Columbia has done a terrible job of maintaining the ball field at the local elementary school. It's missing about half the grass that it should have. And that's given rise, as is common in many places, for people to say, it doesn't work. It's not gonna endure. And therefore, the artificial turf default option comes into play. Again, I'm telling you things that you know very well, but they're happening in real time here. So in service to my constituents, I have sought to provide the widest possible range of information regarding artificial turf and natural grass playing fields, bringing to my community via Zoom with this group more than 18 experts, executives from industry, scientists, as I said, and environmentalists. So tonight, again, we're going to be focusing on natural grass fields, and I'm thrilled to have our 7 panelists joining us tonight. And I'm very pleased to have all of you in the community, many of my constituents, and then people from around the broader neighborhood in Washington. And frankly, some folks are coming in from across the country who heard about this and have registered. So I welcome all of you and look forward to the conversation. Let me tell you what the run of show is going to be, and then we'll get started. I am going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves in the following way, not just a name and an affiliation, but rather to sort of tell us their story around natural grass, namely looking at their practice, their program, their philosophy, so that all of you on the call can become familiar with who they are and what they're about and what they believe in and how they're practicing the work that they're doing. 5 minutes each times 7, 35 minutes. And then what we're going to do is go through a series of questions that really get into depth around the framing question that I have put forward tonight, which I've circulated it in the public announcements and to the panelists, and I'll just read it, which is, are properly designed, constructed, and maintained natural grass playing fields, including the use of organic practices, a viable, sustainable, and affordable alternative to artificial turf? That question, by the way, is the question on the minds of many of my constituents and people in our community as they evaluate synthetic turf versus natural grass. So that's our guiding question. And to get at that question, I'm going to be asking the panelists to address, regarding natural grass playing fields, design, construction, maintenance, playability, and cost. And we're going to work our way through those. So at the end of this conversation, for everyone on this call, you will have a very robust set of facts and information and perspectives on this big question as to whether or not natural grass fields are viable. And because we're recording this, this will stand into perpetuity as a bit of a tutorial for anyone who wants to come along and listen to this after the fact, including officials in the District of Columbia government, whom I've invited to be part of this conversation, and will share with them the recording, because they're actively making decisions about the type of turf, right? So that's what we're going to do. Let me just identify our panelists, first of all, and then I will go in order and have them introduce themselves, as I say, in full. Mike Goatley is with us, who is at Virginia Tech University. He is a professor and a turf grass extension specialist there at Virginia Tech. Drew Miller is the fireball 30-year-old, I believe you're 30 years old or thereabouts, Drew. You're a young man in any event, teacher and director at Brentsville for the District High School turf grass management program, which is a unique program in that he's teaching turf grass management and the students are the worker bees who take care of the fields. It's an innovative program that I know he'll speak to. Jerad Minnick is Director of Grounds and Environmental Management at the Maryland SoccerPlex, which is about 35, 40 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. in Boyd, Maryland. He's also the founder of the Maryland SoccerPlex Sports Turf Institute and the founder of the Natural Grass Advisory Group. Chip Osborne in Maine is president of Osborne Organics. He's the founder of Organic Landscape Association, and he's on the board of directors. He's the vice president of the board of directors of Beyond Pesticides. Son Roseline is a sports stadium manager for the North Area Athletic Complex in Jefferson County School District in Golden, Colorado. Son is also president of the board of directors of the Sports Field Management Association. Pam Jerad is a turf grass specialist at Ohio State University in the Department of Horticulture and Crops. I understand OSU, and you can tell us more about this, Pam, has a 4-year turf grass science specialization. So it's a great program there. And finally, Rebecca Thompson is a founding member and driving force behind the Field Fund on Martha's Vineyard. So those are our 7 panelists. Again, I can't thank you guys enough for being with us.
All right, they're just the introduction, so we didn't miss anything.
And folks, when you come on, if you kindly will mute yourselves, or I will do that for you. There we go. So in the order in which I've read your names, what again I want you to do is take 5 minutes, tell us who you are, tell us your story in short around the topic we're talking about tonight, natural grass playing fields, your passion, your program, your philosophy. And Mike Goatley, will start with you.
All right, Bruce, I doubt that I can go 5 minutes, but I'll give you a story of what I am. So don't put the clock on me.
Would you rather do that?
No worries, no worries.
You heard that I am a professor and extension turfgrass specialist at Virginia Tech. So I'm located in Blacksburg, Virginia. I've been in academia now for a little over 35 years. Started my career, got a PhD at Virginia Tech in 1988. First taught for 16 years at Mississippi State, and now close to 20 years at Virginia Tech. My role primarily in this position at Tech is I serve the entire state of Virginia, putting on educational programs, outreach efforts, conducting applied research here at the university. I certainly have a passion for sports fields. That's been a part of my career that I guess I would say I've most enjoyed getting to know and working in, although I work in all areas of turfgrass. So golf people, sod production, lawn care, you name it, I do it. And I am a co-author on one of the textbooks that's used in terms of sports field design and maintenance.
Fantastic. And Mike, if you could just tell us, since I know a little bit about your background, the work you do across the state of Virginia.
Yeah, I do a lot of educational stuff. So I'm the person that if a problem occurs, they call me, can I please come take a look, try to diagnose, work through what the issues are. I put on a lot of educational programs with my colleagues. I'm an agronomist, a plant and soils guy by training. I've got a whole crew here, just like Pam has at Ohio State, for turfgrass weed specialist, disease specialist, entomologist, instruction specialist, large crop of graduate students, undergrads in 4-year and 2-year programs. So, but my job is I do a lot of talking, a lot of traveling, a lot of site visits, helping the industry at their locations.
Fantastic. I'll go next to one of your star alumni here, Drew Miller. Drew, take it away from there, and you can explain your association with Professor Goatley.
So yeah, I'm a graduate of Virginia Tech. I was not the best student in the class, and he can attest to that. But I'm a Virginia Tech grad of Turfgrass, as well as a master's in agricultural education. I'm the current director of the Brentsville Turfgrass Management Program in Nokesville, Virginia, at Brentsville District High School. I actually also am a former, I used to work in the MLB with a couple teams in the NFL with Pittsburgh Steelers before my time as a teacher. I kind of fell into my job, and Dr. Goatley can also attest to that because he saved me when it came to sort of the development of curriculum and all that back when I started I say a few years, it's been 7 years now. Golf both associates and bachelor's degrees. And yeah, we have a complete natural grass play facility. And we to use our students to develop their overall ability as turf grass managers. And yeah, I don't think it's 5 minutes, but I I think that's pretty much all I got.
So just tell me one quick thing that I know a little bit from your story, Drew, and that is with regard to natural grass versus synthetic turf, you confronted in your school district a bit of a challenge to maintain that program. Tell us what that was.
Yeah, so about I think it was 2019. We came to a crossroad with our county in Prince William County schools. There's been a movement with artificial turf, and it is an equity point now, which a lot of you understand what that is. But truly, it's just that every school has to be given the equal opportunity to the resources and the education that is provided at each high school. And at Brentsville, we actually had just won the Sports Field Management Association Football Field of the Year, and our program was starting to gain some notoriety, and people took note of what we were doing. And believe it or not, actually, I did not do much when it came to, rallying people behind the idea of, keeping our natural grass playing surface in our stadium field. It was really our students and the idea that we developed a generational group of individuals who had the knowledge and skill not only to maintain the fields, but also understand the significance of safe playable surfaces. And they knew that they could provide a better, safer playing surface with the natural grass playing surface at Brentsville than a synthetic turf field. And it was a very big moment for our program because it showcased not only, that it's possible, but also that it truly is a better option when it comes to player safety, comes to the overall playability. And we're a high school, so our budget is not very big. And I know plenty of people understand that. But we are able to produce fields at the highest playability and highest level that we possibly can when it comes to our budget and our sort of frame of work as a high school.
Great. Well, thanks, because that was an intriguing part of the story as I've gotten to know your history a bit. Thanks so much for that. Yep. Jerad.
Yes.
You're on, friend.
Thanks for that. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone. Obviously, those of you who are in the Washington, D.C. area are directly familiar with Maryland SoccerPlex because we are on the north side of the city. And if your child or if you're involved in soccer, you play here. My background, I started my career actually. I grew up on a family farm in the middle of nowhere in Missouri, and found turf management as a passion at a local golf course. Through that, I went to school. I do have, as these professors are talking about, all these teachers are talking about, I am someone that has been through one of their programs and trained, made the choice to make a career of turfgrass management and high traffic natural grass sports field maintenance specifically. I was a assistant turfgrass manager at the University of Missouri. I was the manager of grounds for the Kansas City Royals. And I've been director of grounds for Sporting Kansas City and Major League Soccer. And then I've been at Maryland SoccerPlex. In total, I've been here 13 years. I was not here for 6 years. I also own a consultancy, as Bruce mentioned, called Natural Grass Advisory Group. Through that, I am the lead consultant for Major League Soccer, for all teams in Major League Soccer and for all teams in the National Women's Soccer League, so the two professional leagues in our country. But all of that said, or all of that because of our work specifically on high use natural grass fields. Most of you that are local may not realize that SoccerPlex, you hear of SoccerPlex, but SoccerPlex is one of the most high traffic, high profile facilities in this country. We do well over 500 matches a field per year. We do we have 7 fields with training on them right now. We do trainings every single night of the week. We use our fields all the time. We are a nonprofit here for one reason, to serve the local community. And that is through providing space to local soccer clubs and playing matches, and also to drive or have an economic impact on Montgomery County and the northern DC region. We just finished a tournament the past weekend that had 450 teams in it that come from all over the country. We just finished a tournament 2 weeks ago that was 5 days long that had the top 256 teams in the Major League Soccer Academy. So 39 states were represented. We do have an economic impact on this area. It's something that's overlooked a lot. And as all of you know from the DC area, it has now rained every single weekend this year, except for one, the second weekend of March. And we have not canceled a single game this entire spring. So we play through a lot of rain, and we're not in perfect condition. That's also because soccer has been up 21% this spring. I didn't think we had space for 21% more games, but we have found a way because there's a demand in the community. So that's all I really have, Bruce. Unless you have questions for me like you did for the others.
I'll just make one quick comment, because we're going to get into the substance of our program here after the introductions. And I'm mindful Chip has to depart early, so I want to get to him in full. I was out at the SoccerPlex this weekend to go out and take a look at the fields. And it was incredibly busy, thousands of people out there. And the fields were, at least as I perceived them, in incredibly good shape. These beautiful natural grass fields. And when I talk to people in my community about the feasibility of natural grass, I point, of course, to the SoccerPlex because it's so close, and say, if you want to see natural grass fields that are heavily used, simply go out to Boyd, Maryland, and take a look at the SoccerPlex. But a lot of kids around here play soccer, so many families are already familiar with it, which is
I appreciate you saying that, because it, as I mentioned, it's one of those things that because we're local, it's sort of dismissed. Like, oh, well, it's just a SoccerPlex, and I deal with that. Like we dealt with that with DC government previously. Well, it's something to be proud of for the local area, and it's something that shouldn't be dismissed. But you know, we're trying to be on the cutting edge of things to serve the community.
Right. Excellent. Well, again, welcome, Chip, and thanks very much. Jerad, rather, thanks very much. Chip, you're on my mind. Let's go to you.
All right. You had asked me to put together a few pictures. Do you want me to run through 10 slides that will outline everything I have to say, or do you want me just to talk? Whatever you'd like me to do.
Well, sure, you can show the slides. We can just say, yeah, absolutely. And because you're going to have to go early, if you go a little long, that's all right, because I want to make sure I get you in full. So you
all
should
right, if you want to give me screen sharing privileges.
I just did.
Okay, so I assume you can all see my screen. So yeah. My focus is natural turf management, choices and challenges. The field you see here has been all natural since its inception in 2006. So we can develop these fields with longevity. So, you know, my approach is that I can successfully grow grass for playing fields without the heavy reliance on synthetic pesticides, fertilizers, once they're taken from the equation. In my experience, all these fields are heavily used, and we're able to produce the desired results. I've been in horticulturist for 50 years, 25 years as a conventional manager of land and plant material, and 25 years, the most recent 25 years, natural or organic, whatever you choose to call it, 24 years in turfgrass. I am not in athletic field construction. You know, I'm managing turfgrass with natural protocols. So why do we do this? All the pictures, by the way, you're seeing here have had no chemical impact, and they go back to 2001, 2002. There's some 20-year models in here. We do this because simply, in my opinion and the opinion of others, the EPA framework for risk assessment is outdated. It's 1972 statute. So the pesticides that, you know, we look at today and that are around are evaluated under, you know, risk assessment based on acute toxicity. And my feeling is that there's enough science now to show that those pesticides that are lower risk at high doses have been found to be high risk at low doses, especially for children, sensitive members of the population. So that's what drives this. I didn't just wake up today and decided I wanted to focus on chemical free. There was a reason I came to this 25 years ago. It's important to understand that when we're talking about these products that we choose not to use, that testing is only done on the active ingredient, which is a relatively small percentage of what's in that bag, box, or bottle. Inert ingredients are generally the largest part of a pesticide, and they're not tested. So I follow a systems approach to natural management, marriage of three concepts: basic understanding of soil biology, revised cultural practices, and the exclusive use of natural organic product. Soil microbial life is at the heart of functioning plant material. We begin with soil testing and do extensive soil testing, even put the soil under a microscope to identify what is going on there, and then work to develop programs that both address the immediate needs of the turf grass and build soil and soil structure for the longer term. Natural, this is a municipal little league field and doubles as a practice field in the outfield the rest of the year. Can be done on a large scale. I worked on this field on the left for 2.5 years with no conventional input, and was able to produce those results on the right. And again, the one on the right is in Massachusetts, and it's used from as soon as it gets opened in early April until it closes down in November. And it's used for baseball, general recreation, and field hockey. Here's a fall field hockey. Grass is cut short. You may have heard that, organic has to have 3-inch long grass. This is grass cut to 1 3/4 inches, which is what we need to do to play field hockey. Here's a field that was under an organic renovation. And this has had, an aggressive 3-month approach, and it was opened up right after that. Again, field hockey. This is an NCAA field that I worked on for 4 years. And that was all managed naturally with a combination of liquid and granular program. And that only ended because the soccer coach decided that he wanted Bermuda grass instead of Kentucky bluegrass. Another municipal field, the idea that, we have that kind of a resilient grass. We're not looking at high weed pressures. We're able to manage to the municipality's communicated expectation. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, it can be done managing high profile without the use of synthetics.
Well, that was a great tour of the horizon, Chip, of what you do. And I very much appreciate that. In fact, you walked into a lot of the issues that we're going to get into in depth in just a little bit, but that was a great introduction. So thank you. Thank you for that. I want to come back to you since you are going to have to leave early here in just a little bit, but let me have the three remaining panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll get into our questions. Son, Roseline, tell us about what you do out there and your life, son.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me again, having me back. I appreciate it. And again, I just want to commend you on having these discussions as a group. My name's Sun Roseline. I'm a certified sports field manager. I work for Jefferson County Public School District out in the Denver metro area, just west of Denver. My stadium's technically in Golden. We are a little bit unique in our setup within the school district in that we have centralized stadium locations. So rather than being a field at a high school, I'm a centralized stadium where I'm the home stadium for 6 different high schools. So they all come to us to play their home varsity games. With having that many home teams, that means we have 30 to 35 football games in a football season. We have 60 soccer games in 8 weeks. We also host boys and girls lacrosse. The state of Colorado just approved girls flag football as a sanctioned sport. So we're going to be adding that to our football field in the fall. Thanks, Drew. So the challenges certainly never cease to evolve. But we are all natural grass. Our stadium is now 24 years old. And the football stadium, we just completed our only second resod between the hashes in 24 years. The soccer field's never been resodded. So we're looking at the majority of, an original field base that's lasted that long. So longevity is a big part of what we do. I feel like every year that we are able to maintain a safe, playable natural grass surface, we're saving our school district money. We would have been through a couple rounds of synthetic surfaces by this point had the district made that decision before I started there. So I've been at the NAC for just over 19 years now. So seen a lot of changes and evolutions in how we are able to manage our facility with different pieces of equipment. And I will say that for a school facility, having resources, the resources we need to maintain a good natural grass surface, we're very lucky in that we have those resources. I think the biggest thing to remember when maintaining a field is that your field manager is educated, right? Like there's so much knowledge out there. There's so much science that goes into what we do. And so it can't just be like, oh, hey, so-and-so can cut the grass today. Like there's a lot of science behind what we do. And it's important to stay up to date on what's the latest and greatest. And field manager has to the resources and the ability to put those resources to use to maintain the natural grass fields. So I'm gonna leave it there unless there's any further questions right now. I'm sure we'll a little bit down the road.
Yeah, that's a great introduction. There are questions that are coming into the chat, and I encourage panelists, if you wish to take a look at those, I will also look at those and surface those in due course when we get into the Q&A period. So I just want to acknowledge that people are able to put questions in the chat, and I appreciate that. And folks out in the audience, we will have time for open Q&A and discussion. I'll allow time and leave time for that, so we will get to all that. And hopefully by the time we work our way through all the different components of natural grass fields, we will have answered a number of questions that people have, but we'll certainly go to specific questions that folks are putting into the chat. Pam, let's go to you out in Columbus, Ohio.
Hi, thank you very much for having me and inviting me. This is a great conversation, and it's certainly generated a lot of thought for me this week about how I think about this topic. So an introduction to me, you probably gathered straight away that I am not originally from Columbus, Ohio. I'm from England, and I worked for 10 years at a college. My background, similar to Jerad, it was not in sports turf. My background was in landscape horticulture. That's what I wanted to do when I got through college. My uncle had a plant nursery, so I've always loved plants and nature. And I worked at a place called Myerscough College in England for 9 years. And I was an instructor, so I would teach the students how to manage natural grass fields. We did a lot of greenhouse work, landscape horticulture work, and then I came across the subject of sports turf and absolutely fell in love. So as a huge soccer fan, for me, it was a great fit. And so instructing students on how to maintain natural grass surfaces, we did tours, we did, all the kinds of stuff with students that we do in a teaching environment. I came to Columbus in 1999. So actually my 25th anniversary is next week. I came to do my master's degree in turfgrass science and became a research assistant doing applied research in sports turf management for a few years with one of the professors, got my master's degree. And then I got an extension position. So very similar to Dr. Goatley, I do extension outreach in the state of Ohio. I visit high school fields, middle school, elementary fields, all the way up through the professional stadiums. I put on educational seminars. So we have a big turf conference every December in Columbus where we have, 1,000 people, a couple of thousand people come in for that conference. We put on regional conferences. I serve on the Ohio Sports Field Managers Board and a committee for the National Sports Field Managers. And I also offer online certificates for industry professionals. So people that are actually working on sports fields, baseball fields, we have these online certificate programs that people can take while they work. And so I manage those as well. I have a big teaching appointment now, and I teach about 1,000 students a year, both online and in person. And I think that's it. I did want to mention, because I got the impression that a lot of the people that are interested in this topic don't really have the basics, the fundamentals of what natural grass is and what its benefits are in the urban environment. So years ago, I did a YouTube video. It's called The Benefits of Turf. And you could just Google my second name, Jerad, The Benefits of Turf, and you'll come across that video. It's pre-TikTok, so it's 10 minutes long. So I apologize. It probably needs to be done for the younger audience, but it just goes through some of the major benefits of natural grass and how that plays a role in our urban environment, and the importance of how it plays an important role in the urban environment. Everything from runoff and stormwater reduction, soil stabilization, pollutant, it filters out pollutants, it cools the environment. There's all these different things. And I know we are specifically talking about recreation tonight and its importance for athletes. But I think for the bigger picture, we need to look at what a natural plant, a natural grass surface does in an urban environment and how important that green space is. So I think that's it for me. I will hand off to, I think Rebecca's probably next.
Yeah, Rebecca is next. And you've raised an excellent point that I want to get into in the conversation, Pam, about why natural grass. Why natural grass, particularly in an urban environment, which of course we're in here in Washington, D.C., for the benefit of the people on this call that want to be informed and educated about these benefits, not only how you build these fields and how much they cost, but at the end of the day, why would we prefer them? Of course, we have many of us reasons already coming into the conversation, but you've touched on something very important. So we're going to come back to that. Okay. Thanks so much. Rebecca.
Hi everyone. Bruce, thanks for having me. And it's an honor really to be on this panel with everyone. And I did write up some notes just because I wanted to keep it to 5 minutes, but I grew up in DC. I live on the Vineyard now, but I grew up on 42nd and Ingomar Street and then moved to Chevy Chase myself. I went to GDS. Very proud alum, except I do not like their embrace of plastic fields, and I've given them a hard time about it. But a brief overview of the work that my nonprofit does. We founded the Field Fund in 2017 here on the Vineyard, in the midst of a prolonged island-wide debate about whether or not to install a plastic field at our regional high school. We have a sole source aquifer here, environmentally sensitive area. Anyway, a lot of concerns. And really, we went on to form relationships with turfgrass experts, including Jerad and Chip, but Jerad worked closely with us for years as our advisor, and vendors and school officials. We partnered with our local parks and rec departments here, our custodians, our groundskeeper, and subcontractors to provide supplemental grass field support for island fields across the Vineyard, using a regenerative approach. So we use some, mostly organic products, but anyway, we'd really try to lean into the whole regenerative land care approach. It's an ongoing investment, and it's already paid huge dividends in terms of safer, healthier grass fields for our athletes and an increase in playing time and usage. And taking a step back, kind of how I got into it in the first place, there was so much focus on the plastic field. We really wanted to look at, to Bruce's point, how did we get here? Why are we even looking in this direction? And I think it's to the point you made, Bruce, that so many municipal, town, school fields are just they're the lowest priority. When we have tight budgets and lots of other things to focus on, our fields really take the hit. And so many of us have not even ever seen a healthy grass field before that really drains efficiently, that works well. That's something that a lot of our children, and not even myself, had really experienced much. So, and it goes back to that, small budget, outdated maintenance, outdated field design. Maybe they're throwing some generic seed out a couple of times a year, every once in a while, not even a couple of times a year, or poorly graded, some generic seed and for synthetic fertilizer, mowing occasionally with the dull blades. You get the idea, and that's kind of what you invest in these fields, and is kind of what we see. And then we also, lots of close the fields when it rains, close the fields when it's before, in the winter, and it just everyone kind of, anyway, it was interesting. It was easy to assume that grass fields just couldn't handle it, but when we look at our underperforming grass fields, and because the plastic turf industry is has such a marketing machine, often the conversation turns to see, this is why we need a plastic field. This is, rather than asking, well, how can we make why aren't our grass fields meeting our expectations? What can we do to help them perform better? That's rarely the question. So, and there's a huge list, thankfully, that Jerad helped us learn. I'm quoting Jerad right now. That's why he's laughing, but there's a huge list that we could do, So anyway, we went about kind of challenging some of those assumptions around grass fields, and fast forward, we help maintain a bunch of fields on the island. What do we do? What does it look like? We soil test. We work with an agronomist to make sure that we're choosing the right fertilizer and soil amendments. We slice seed, high impact aeration. We slice seed and slice aerate. Sorry. We mow a lot, as Chip was saying, sharp blades, keep it short, leave the clippings. We do our field maintenance in between uses. We do not close the fields during maintenance. We pride ourselves on really keeping these fields open year round. We don't, if it's raining, we ask that they stay open. If the schools want to, or the leagues want to cancel events, that's on them. But we actually encourage all of our school and municipal partners to leave the fields open for play, and we actually incentivize them by offering to do more maintenance. The more they approve use, the more they encourage folks to use the fields and leave them open. So, and we encourage smart field use. So when they are open, encouraging our PE teachers and our coaches to use different parts of the field, get movable goals, shift them around, make sure you're using the whole field, play on the diagonal if it's a scrimmage, if you're just practicing penalty shots or whatever, you don't need the full field. And that would happen with a plastic field too. Wear and tear is real, no matter what surface it is. And so just being smarter about our field use is critical. But I could go on and on. I'm sorry if I've gone overboard.
No, it's all good. No, it's
okay.
Great. It's great to hear your story. But if there's anything else you want to add, go ahead. I don't mean
No. That's it. To be honest, the fields are seeing more and more use, like I said, and they're getting healthier and healthier. They're getting better. It's amazing, all that consistent routine, maintenance and that investment. We're seeing the results every day.
Right. Excellent. Okay. So this round of introductions, I think, has served its purpose to introduce all of you to our audience, to give people a sense of where you're coming from, the experience you've had, some of your perspectives on the practice of cultivating a natural grass playing field. So thank you very much for that. As billed, what I'd like to do now is kind of walk through different components of cultivating, developing natural grass fields. And we will get to a number of the questions that are in the chat in terms of playable hours, maintenance issues, use of organic versus non-organic substances to nurture the fields and so forth. But I have the questions in front of me, folks who've submitted those. So rest assured, I will get to your specific questions. But just to approach this kind of systematically, and Chip, I want to come to you since there are only 10 minutes before you're going to have to go. I've laid out construction, or design rather, construction, and I know you mentioned you don't do construction, maintenance, playability, and cost. So among those issues, when our community is looking at considering natural grass fields, and we're weighing these different elements, what further would you want to say to us about what it takes to have a viable, sustainable, and affordable natural grass field, whether it's a soccer field, baseball field, football field, whatever?
Well, first off, construction is critically important, as all of the turf professionals, on the panel know. It all begins with construction. And if corners are cut in construction, or in good construction methods aren't used with attention to soil and root zone mix, that field, whether it's natural, organic, or chemically managed, is not going to perform well. So what my experience shows that so many communities turn to the issue of artificial turf, synthetic turf, because they're not really doing turf management in the first place. They really don't have a program in place. They're not doing the cultural practices. They don't aerate. They skimp on grass seed and do all of those things. And when we understand what grass is, it's a living, breathing thing. It's an organism that is alive, and it needs resources. Resources are water. Resources are biological life in the soil. Resources are fertilizers as catalysts that drive the process of photosynthesis. Grass gets damaged. Most people don't understand that a grass plant only lives for a year or a year and a half. It's a perennial system, but individual plants have a fixed lifespan. So we overseed the more heavily used the field is. Now, that into account, like the SoccerPlex is Bermuda grass. So all we can do with that is to stimulate the reproduction of that grass as rapidly as possible. But the cost is directly related to the intensity of use and the expectation of the manager or the end user. So cost can be variable because expectations can be across the board. But I've worked with so many municipalities and school districts around the country that come to me because they have an interest in managing without, synthetic materials, but they're not really doing anything anyway. All of the good turf management protocols that they should have in place, they just skimp on. And then the field gets deteriorated, and then the argument comes, well, grass is no good because I don't have enough grass here and it's not safe. I need synthetic turf. And it seems to go that way so often. You rarely find a municipality that has a really well-maintained, professionally maintained grass field that wants to rip it all up and put in plastic. But they're putting in plastic because they've done a very poor job at managing the real grass.
Right, right. So going back to what you said about how critical construction is, and of course the design of the field and the construction of the field, what more would you want to say about that aspect of the construction? What are the critical elements there that we need to have in mind?
So in my opinion, critical elements would be understanding what drainage capabilities should be. And there's multiple ways that you can create drainage in an athletic field, from a passive crown field or a sloping of a subgrade down to, a very active, like a Cambridge drain system where we're literally moving water in channels off the field. Of course, those different methods affect the cost. Some are very relatively inexpensive to do. Some cost a lot more money. I think probably the one thing that I find most often is not a lot of attention is paid to the root zone mix, the soil that goes in there. I mean, when I get involved in getting in on an advisory capacity, when soil is used as a topsoil borrow and imported to a site, we do extensive testing. Would never put it down without extensive testing for texture, sand, silt, and clay, for all the chemical nutrient content, as well as organic matter. And most important, it goes under a microscope to see if there's any biological life in there. And so specifications, probably the weakest link when a municipality engages with an engineer or with a landscape architect design firm, is the language for soils is very boilerplate. And a lot of it is left up to interpretation by the installer or the contractor. So for me, getting it right in the beginning is most important.
Mm-hmm. On the fields that you advise, and Chip, I take it you serve in an advisory capacity. You're not obviously a groundskeeper for any particular field, but you're advising municipalities and private groups and so forth on the cultivation of natural grass fields using organic methods. That's right? Okay. Your familiarity, and I want to have you talk to us on these points before you have to go, with the playable hours on a given field that you're familiar with, again, following organic practices. If it's a soccer field or a football field or a combination, what do you see in terms of the durability of the field to tolerate a lot of play? How many hours?
Well, I don't, as part of what I do, I don't track hours of use. You know, many of my clients will track hours of use and, you know, do that and make that judgment on that. When I have managed, I honestly feel that with my natural methods, I'm getting it, if the soil is in decent condition of a decent root zone depth, and we have the biological in place, I can get my roots where I want it, that I can make natural grass strong enough, durable enough to stand up to, you know, pretty intense wear and tear. You know, you saw the picture of the NCAA, you know, soccer field, and that was just used constantly, you know, all the time in a warm climate out in California. So it stood up to, you know, all of the wear and tear that we had to throw to it. Now, of course, like a baseball field gets very different wear and tear. So it's a very different animal when you're talking about, you know, AA baseball field as opposed to, you know, something that gets much heavier use. So hours of use, again, my focus is creating the input and the cultural practice side of the program. But because I'm doing so much of that all the time, I've never really tracked hours because I don't get involved with the municipality at that level.
Right. Well, the other panelists, when we get to this with them,
they have more experience.
Yeah,
right. That's probably more in their wheelhouse to be able to say, I can put so many feet on there, so many times a day, and so many days a week.
So what do we need to know about the difference between organic and synthetic use of materials for nurturing these fields, Chip? Are there any particular characteristics, concerns that come up between the two?
Well, I mean, either way, whether you're using conventional materials or natural materials, either one of them is going to be able to grow grass. And I mean, I spent 25 years conventionally, and I can grow anything. And, you know, but it's not just about the materials, it's about the incorporation of the cultural practices, right? It's dedication to aeration. The biggest enemy of turf grass, no matter how we're growing it, is compaction. And if we don't have, if we're aerating once or twice a year, the field is going to go downhill. I generally recommend 4 or 5 times a year. And most turf grass professionals would be in that same boat, introducing oxygen and letting carbon dioxide escape. So what is of primary importance is incorporating that. And when we're dealing with those grasses that can be overseeded, focusing on, you know, overseeding as part of building the turf. Now, warm season grasses, generally, we're looking at just reproduction of the existing turf system, not introducing new grasses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you have, again, kind of rule of thumb on maintenance costs, Chip, for organic practices for a given field, soccer field or a football field, on an annual basis?
Well, costs are, you know, I have one where, you know, we did a 20-acre model, $35,000 to $40,000 to manage 20 acres for a full cool season field around there. So that puts it that somewhere between $1,750 and $2,000 an acre at pretty high-end management. Now, one of the things with organic, the variability in cost, and where I'm always hesitant to put an exact cost on it, because it's not like a 4-step program. It is, you know, there's different ways we can approach it. We can do a granular program. We can do a much less expensive liquid program, you know, focusing on soil. So we can bring the cost in line. And then for me, getting involved in a field, the cost is really determined by what I'm looking at when I'm first called in as a consultant. And if I'm looking at a field that's relatively challenged, it's going to cost a whole lot more chemically or organically, you know, to get that to meet an expectation than it is if somebody asked me to do a field where it's already in pretty decent shape. So I think that, you know, one of the things I could design a generic program and put a cost to it, but if we put 10 fields side by side, it might not fairly address all 10.
Right, right. cost is one of these factors that comes up in our community conversation all the time. And the reason it comes up is because, again, the framing is around natural grass versus synthetic. And when folks look at the cost of a synthetic field, they generally speak of maintenance in a very different way than when they speak of maintenance for a grass field. And a lot of folks don't quite understand that synthetic fields require a lot of maintenance. And that's a separate conversation.
You know but that's a valid one. As I'm a just recently retired 20-year elected official in my local park department, and as a volunteer, I oversaw. I had to manage I didn't work for the town. I just was elected commissioner, but I had to oversee management of a synthetic field as well as the natural grass fields. And the synthetic fields, in order to hold on to a warranty, you have to groom them with some degree of frequency. You know, they should be disinfected. We need to add infill. The labor, certainly we're not cutting grass, but, you know, there are some synthetic fields now that are designed with irrigation out on the perimeter to come down in and cool it. So, yes, that's probably the biggest thing when they talk about, people have this impression that all of a sudden managing natural grass, however you manage it, is so expensive, we can't afford it. We're just going to put in some plastic and leave it there for 10 or 12 years and not do anything to it. Mm-hmm. And that's, I can tell you from experience, that's not the case.
So final question for you, since it's just 8 o'clock and you're going to have to run. The cost of building a field of the sort that you would recommend to a client, Chip, say it's a soccer field or a football field, a field. Obviously, people have in mind what size that is and the scope and scale of it. Can you put a ballpark figure on it?
No, because I'm not in athletic field construction. So any number I threw out there would just be a number, you know? So, I mean, I'm really not the one to put that cost to it. That really would be, you know, whether it comes down to, first you need the engineer, then you need the architect, then you need the installation turf professional, and then the design, and then build the field. As I mentioned, there's a lot of different costs that can go into a natural grass field, depending on how we choose to address drainage, how much of a focus we put on the quality of the root zone mix that's used there, you know, all of that. So all of those variables, you can have a low end price and a higher end price. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and all the way down the line, but that would be a question best served for, you know, somebody that's actually in athletic field construction.
Good enough. And before we go, is there anything that you haven't been able to say, that I haven't prompted you to say, that you would like to say before you go? I'm not dismissing you. Stay as long as you like.
Yeah, no, I have to. Yeah. So no, I mean, I'm a grass guy. I'm not an advocate of synthetic, you know, and, you know, putting multiple acres of plastic, you know, for all of the reasons, you know, like things like Pam said, and the reasons why grass is important. Plastic gives very little back to us other than this 24/7 play, supposedly, and, you know, and never having to rain out, never having to worry about it, and the fictitious idea there's no maintenance. So, you know, the advantages of grass, in my opinion, far outweigh synthetic. And, you know, as we all know, with synthetic turf, there's a whole host of athletic injuries now that are associated with play, you know, on that type of surface. So it's nowhere near as forgiving as, you know, as natural grass. So always have been and always will be an advocate of a natural grass system.
And that's great. And you're going to have to run. Other panelists, is there anything you'd like to ask Chip before he goes? All right, Chip. Well, listen, stay as long as you like. You don't have to run.
No, I do have to fly. So
okay, well, listen, thank you so much, and safe travels.
Thank you.
Panelists, let's go back to the construction issue, because I want all of you to be able to weigh in on that, since, again, we're looking at a ball field that's failed at our local elementary school. And we're talking to the District of Columbia Department of General Services about replacing that field. And all kinds of questions come up about how you would build a natural grass field, what would be required to do that. that are part of the conversation with always the sort of prospect of a synthetic option coming into play, right? So on the construction side, weigh in on this in terms of how you all see the critical aspects of building a solid natural grass field.
I can get it started. I'm with the artificial field not going in our stadium. We actually did a renovation, and it's not a full renovation. It really depends cost-wise on your expectations of what you can do according money-wise. For example, obviously we've talked about soil multiple times tonight. We wanted to come in and remove 10 inches of the native soil that we've had for our field for long before I ever got there, and add in a sandier mix, if not full sand. We got shot down very quickly. And so we had to sort of adapt to it. And when it comes to, playing surfaces, I actually talked to Jerad about it. When it came to the most important thing is obviously drainage, a lot of things come into play with that. Again, I think somebody mentioned cost-wise, you can have an NFL field drainage system put in if you want, or you could have, 2% crown on your field where the water just drains off. It depends on how much you're willing to pay. We obviously did not get any drainage installed other than a French drain, which came with the track, not with the field in mind. The overall cost of grass, we were quoted for sod install around $40,000. That's just for the grass and the install, not anything related to irrigation, nothing related to added soils. That is not including fertility program post that. We did not sod. We ended up sprigging. And for those that are not in the know of sprigging, it is live, living grass that is placed on, it's called sprigged into, but it's sort of placed and sown into the soil, and then you grow the Bermuda grass from that sprig, and it fills in. That process, we sprigged June 7th, and we were playing August 10th, I believe. We could have played probably end of July, but the schedule put us at August 10th. There is a process to it, but again, with proper maintenance, proper fertility plan, talked a little bit about aeration and making sure we have all these things. We were able to create the best possible product that we could. We had a situation where our natural grass field was an afterthought of our artificial install, which was on our practice field. So we were dealing with someone who was giving us no money from our project that was already out to bid that they accepted. And so we sort of built what we could into that install. And it really depends on what you guys are willing to put forward and how much you're willing to spend. Again, in hindsight, our artificial going in costs 1.7 million versus our natural, when you look at it face value, probably costs anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 when all is said and done. So you can tell it's a little bit less, and there's definitely a lot of room to hire a groundskeeper to maintain that surface. It's something that I think that a lot of people don't quite understand, is that even with a full-time employee with benefits and all these things, you're still way under that cost, even throughout that 8-year span that the warranty says it is. But the other thing that we really focus in on, and Jerad actually helped me with sort of deciding on what type of grass, when we talk about science, Son talked about it, really truly is a science. There are new genetics that have come out where the grass can handle more. And I do want to shout out the panel that's on here right now. You have some of the best sports field managers in the country who are dealing with some of the most insane climates, as well as, overall playability and amount of hours. I don't know how Jerad does what he does. I don't know how Son does what she does. It is absolutely insane, the amount of athletes that are impacted by them on a daily basis. So it is all in the science, and they have sort of, they have executed that and truly found what works for them. And you really can find that here in DC. I like to think I do an okay job. So,
Great. Well, let's keep going around the panel, because a lot of you have experience. And Jerad, of course, you've built fields, right? So you know the requirements of building. And of course, Rebecca, you guys have done this in the Field Fund. So talk about the what it takes to build a really solid field in terms of the drainage and the soil and these issues that we've been touching on.
But I want to kick it to Dr. Goatley because he's actually written books about building fields. So all
right, Dr. Goatley.
I haven't written any books on building fields. So I read his books to try to prepare myself for building fields. So.
Well, I did some homework, Bruce, and I talked to a colleague that's a very well-respected field builder in the Northern Virginia area and said, I need you to give me some rough ideas about construction costs, and everything that the panelists have said. He's echoed about it depends. So I'm going to give you the it depends, but his notes back to me said, if you were looking at a native soil with irrigation and some drainage primarily being installed in terms of restoring a crown for surface drainage, that would be a project that we'd probably be bidding out at around $3 to $5 per square foot. Again, some flexibility in the range depending on the site and how much work had to be done. His comment was, but I really wouldn't do that for as I described this group and what they're looking for. He said, at a minimum, my recommendation would be you might work with your native soil, but I would recommend we would blend in soil amendments such as a specified 2 inches of sand and a 1/2 inch of compost. We'd be tilling that to a depth of 8 inches. We would install irrigation. We would install surface drainage. That's going to be roughly $5 a square foot. If we went more to a system that's going to bring more drainage into play, we've heard Chip talk about a Cambridge system. And those of you that are on, like I said, I don't know what you're talking about, check it out online. You can find descriptions of what these are. But basically installing drainage systems to intercept the water, that takes the price to $7 a square foot. A sand cap option, typically those are 4 inches of specified sand put right on top of the existing material. That will have drainage installed on a specified width with that field too to keep the water moving. That's $8 to $10 a square foot. And a full sand-based field in Northern Virginia, all the bells and whistles, irrigation, etc. So kind of the creme de la creme, $12 to $13 a square foot for that system. And again, this is someone that is building athletic fields in that area.
Okay. I haven't been able to do the quick math on multiplying that by the number of square feet of soccer field to understand what that total cost would be, but we can come back and do that. Thank you very much for that. But Mike, tell us about these sort of core principles or elements of building these fields. You were just touching on them in terms of what the contractor would recommend. But when you think about building a viable, sustainable, natural grass soccer field, baseball field, football field, whatever, what are the core principles there?
Well, I've heard Rebecca, well, the entire panel has said it, but I've heard soils over and over again, and that's the lifeblood. You can't have a healthy plant if you don't have a healthy soil. And that goes beyond just, the drainage. It's also the microbiology, the nutrition, how well does it tolerate the traffic, and then linked together with the soils are going to be, I'm a very strong proponent of, you got to have some type of drainage. And if it's surface drainage, I want all fields to have some level of fall, some type of crown. Virginia Tech told Coach Beamer forever he had a flat field. It's never been flat at Blacksburg. I'd never recommend they install a perfectly flat field. It's always had a 3/4 to 1% minimum crown. So you got to keep the water moving either through it, or my preferred way is keep it moving off of it. And I think that's the starting point, Bruce, that we've got to begin there. And then we get into the grass selection and what Drew is just talking about, what Jerad lives there at the SoccerPlex. We're blessed to have new varieties especially of cold hardy Bermuda grasses, which have changed the game plan from when I got in this business way back when. And they're not the easiest grasses to manage in terms of their maintenance requirements, but it's a whole new era in that part of the world in terms of what we can grass these fields in. And yet it still comes down to, you got to have somebody that knows what they're doing to manage all this, to make it happen, because Drew said it's science. It is science, and that's what's involved here.
So what is considered proper drainage?
And I'll let my panelists jump in. It's another, it depends. Because again, I told you my philosophy is I like to see all fields to have some form of a crown. I very much believe that a 1% crown, so a 1 foot fall of 100 foot in length, I don't think that's sufficient. Many athletes prefer things that are definitely going to be flatter for playability, but I just don't think that works in terms of the longevity of the field. And if you're going to ensure further that we're going to minimize water in terms of the possible accumulations on the field, then we start looking at subsurface systems that are tied in, usually in sand slits, something to allow the water to accumulate with a fall on them to go to a catch point and remove that excess water. And that's where it gets down to all this, the difference that you can get into the costs of these different systems and what you might want to do. That's where the cost keeps going up.
Okay. So for drainage, Jerad, Rebecca, Pam, Son, you guys talk about the drainage that you're using now at the SoccerPlex, Jerad, and at the Field Fund, Rebecca, and Son in your project. And Pam, I'd like you to weigh in on this, but talk to us about how your fields drain.
I mean, building on what Dr. Goatley was saying, we keep going to this, it depends, because it does. Ultimately, what we need to do first when we're doing when we're improving a field or building a field is set the expectation, because you cannot allow the expectation, the budget has to be built off the expectation. So if you're expecting to play during the rain, you have one expectation. If you expect to play immediately after the rain, you have a different expectation. If you are able to say, you know what, we can wait a couple hours after a heavy rainfall to be able to get back on the field, or 12 hours, or those, each things are an expectation. Each user group, etc., owner would have, whether it's municipality or school, what is their expectation? When we're comparing grass to artificial directly, usually people say, okay, we want to be able to play through the rain because that's what you can do on an artificial. Well, you need to spend the money is the first question, because typically, especially in our region in the summer, if you're going to have rain, you're going to have lightning with the rain. So you're not going to play through the rain anyway. So you're going to have a lightning delay. So why do you need to play through the rain? The other thing is that, can you stomach or can you allow a bit of closure? We don't have, a few municipalities have decided to take a stand on heat and artificial. If you're closing artificial fields in the summer, you're losing hours of play straight away. You're not losing those hours of play on a grass field in the summer. Maybe you lose them on a grass field in the winter if you're not maintaining it the way you should be. So those are all the expectations. It's not just a blanket, and that's what each, we're kind of going back to that of it depends. The expectation is what depends. What do we want to achieve? And then that sets the budget. We deal with, it's kind of if you want a professional level field, you can't give it a Parks and Rec or a low end budget. Our budget at SoccerPlex isn't significant because we're a nonprofit. The money we have to fund ourselves at a facility like this. We cannot spend more than we make. So that's why we want to actually host more matches, because that allows us to do more work and make more improvements. We have just finished a drainage project that's taken us 10 years to put drainage in 20 fields. And it has cost us to add drainage to all 20 of those fields. It has cost us $2.1 million to do that to 20 fields. We did part of the work in-house. Part of the work we did using some really good contractors. So one of the contractors, Dr. Goatley, was probably referencing. The drainage installation itself, from the contractor standpoint, was about $100,000 to $120,000. Not a significant amount of money to take our fields, because our soil locally, especially from northern DC up through Pennsylvania, is relatively high in sand content. It's very high in silt, so it's very sticky, but it still typically has around at a minimum of 60% sand. So we're able to take our native soil that's here, that our fields were built out of originally, amend them some with some top dressing, and then add drainage pipe slits to be able to get the water to drain away quickly. We did not do it in the Maryland Soccer Foundation, our board of directors. Originally, they set forward on this path to install drainage to play after the rain, because we don't get rain during the day very much in this area until this spring. And so it's really the heavy thunderstorms we get in the evening that then rain out matches for the next morning. That was our goal, is to make sure we have no rainouts. Well, we played through the rain now. 17 of our rain days this year. So it's been a bit. So it's been different, but the drainage is still performed. So it's taking what was there, and Pam could definitely build on this, because her experience, especially understanding the weather in Ohio, that is even more gray and wet and kind of dampish than it is even out here. At least we get a few sunshine days in January, February time that they don't necessarily get in Ohio. These are the kinds of things that we had a problem. We needed to get a creative solution that didn't cost a significant amount of money, or at least that fit into our nonprofit status. And so we got creative, and this was the solution that we came up with. I'll let Pam build on that, because obviously they have even heavier soils out there as well, so it's even more challenging.
So yeah, Jerad, we do. I think we have as many cloudy days here in northern Ohio as we do in Seattle. So we have a lot of clouds and a lot of rain. We get about 50 inches of rain a year. And the soils in Ohio are silt clay loams, and the sort of very generic standard for drainage would be that we want our native soil fields to be able to take 1 inch of water an hour, right? That's kind of a standard, would be 1 inch of water an hour. I've tested fields that we've done saturated hydraulic conductivity tests on them, and they come in at 0.001 inches per hour. So you can imagine, if you get 1 inch of rain, that water's just going to sit there and not go anywhere. And so, like Jerad and Dr. Goatley have said, you look at innovative ways like, crowning the field, incorporating materials like sand, organic material that would help would increase the infiltration rates of that water. Having a full grass field, having a full sward of grass will also help disperse, soak in. If we've got hard compacted soil with no grass on the top, that's going to significantly increase the drainage and runoff. And so again, going back to this depends, but the very basic we want is 1 inch per hour. And so when I go to a high school and I test their field and the soil is terrible, we look at what their options are and what they can afford. And I live in Columbus, and we have one of the largest school districts in Ohio. We have 17 high schools, and we also have that equitable program that Drew was talking about, where if one high school puts in drainage, all 17 do. And so that's the challenge there is, and I think it was Rebecca who said it, and I loved it. Instead of talking about, raising the money for an artificial field, we need to have these really important conversations about how do we have successful, and we need to invest in these natural playing surfaces. There is a science to it. And I think sometimes our industry we don't get heard when we go out to these places because everybody has a lawn and everybody says, well, my lawn doesn't hold water when it rains. Why is the soccer field holding water when it rains? Well, let's get 22 soccer players on your front lawn when it rains and let's see what it looks like afterwards. So it's a science. We need to change the narrative. I think you're getting the impression here, Bruce, and it's true that drainage is the number one. The soil, the health of the soil, 99% of extension visits I go on, it's soil related. The quality of the field is soil related. And so, yeah, 1 inch per hour is the minimum. Ideally more, you know, we have sand-based fields that can take, I don't know, 18 inches an hour when they're a new build, and then they go down from there. And obviously, we don't want to be building a sand-based field for a high school that doesn't have anybody who knows how to take care of that very, you know, micromanaged system. But yeah, I guess I don't have anything else to add other than that, Jared. I don't know if anybody else has, Jared, I don't know if anybody else has anything
Let me direct the conversation this way, because I know people on the call and others want to understand playability. So given what we're talking about, given drainage, given soils, given how much the field can absorb the water, can drain the water away. Jerad, you mentioned, but Rebecca, I want you to add that you haven't had any rainouts at the Maryland SoccerPlex this year, even though it's been raining every single weekend when you've got tournaments and other things going. Those are the kind of practical things that people care about. Can we play on these fields? Whether they play through the rain when there's lightning, obviously that's a different story, right? That's not going to happen. But you mentioned no rainouts. Son, you've referred to this before, so let me just kind of go to this. Rebecca and Son, in turn, talk to us about playability of the fields up on Martha's Vineyard and out in Colorado.
Great, yeah, and just to the last conversation, I don't have much to add because we live on a sandbar here. We have, as Jerad said, the perfect sand soil mix.
It's the most amazing soil I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, so we built, when we rebuilt the fields at the Oak Bluff School, we did it completely flat, no grading. Jerad advised we didn't import any real soil, as little manure from a neighboring property. No irrigation, no drainage whatsoever. State-of-the-art irrigation system. And I recognize this is not applicable to many communities, but the entire thing, it was 2 fields, well, kind of 1.5 because one was smaller, and the whole project cost us $180,000. And that was done on Martha's Vineyard, where we pay a 30% markup, the island markup on everything because it's an island and all the equipment, everything has to be ferried here, and the cost of labor. And this was in the summer, in prime time, high season here. We got it done in a matter of weeks. It was, and to Drew's point, we seeded in late July, I think, and the field was open 3 weeks later for the start of school. Not great, not the best field in the, at first, but we overseeded again that fall. We fertilized again that fall, and it's gotten again better and better. But just for a cost, for ballpark cost ideas. But in terms of our playability, these are not our fields. We are not the owners of the fields or the property owners, so we can't really control that. But we basically, we always say leave them open. If there's pooling water, which there really rarely is, as everyone said, if it's decompacted, it's going to drain really well. That's the key. If there is an area that's more compacted around the goal mouths and certain part of the field for whatever reason is pooling, we just say just avoid that part, play around it, play a different direction. But the fields can take it, if they have good grass coverage and are draining well, and they do drain well if they're aerated properly. And in terms of usage numbers, we're not the best example. We're a small community here. Our fields see a good amount of use because we don't have a ton here, but it's I think compared to where a lot of you all are, it's not. Our fields are absolutely meeting the need of the usage demands that we have here for them, but these are not massive schools that we're talking about.
Right. So Son, jump in, because again, you've mentioned you're serving 6 high schools. You talked in our second town hall about some of the usage, but give us a sense of the amount of use that your fields see, and feel free to talk about any of the other aspects about drainage and these other factors.
Sure. So I got a little excited earlier and didn't like go through my whole spiel. So I have two different fields that are side by side, a football stadium and a soccer stadium. Our football stadium is the creme de la creme, as Dr. Goatley referred to. It's a full sand-based field in subsurface drainage. It was originally built with 12 inches of sand over pea gravel, irrigation, like the whole shebang. The soccer field was built as a sand cap. So initially 4 inches of sand over the native clay. But over the years of top dressing, our cultural practices, now we're at more like 18 inches of sand on the football side and between 8 and 6 inches of sand on the soccer side. So drainage does absolutely play a key role in how successful we are in the playability of our surfaces. As you know, Colorado can be really dry, or we can have a foot of snow. And the only reason we typically would cancel a game is due to lightning. We have kind of a policy on how long we can wait for lightning delays, or so much snow that we don't have the equipment to push it. It's never an actual playing surface issue. So I think, it's like anything. You build something with a good foundation, you use, quality parts, you're going to get a lot of longevity out of that. So I think the success and the playability is really key to the construction, the installation, and how that piece goes. It's just absolutely paramount to providing safe playable fields regardless of the weather and the usage. I saw a question in the chat early about usage. So for us on our soccer field, we're about 30 hours per week. Our football field's about 25 hours per week. And then in the spring, we play boys and girls lacrosse on the football field, and that's about 35 hours a week. So just to kind of give you an idea, we have games every single night, double, triple headers often. So, but if we didn't have the right foundation to build off of, those games probably wouldn't happen in that manner. So again, we're lucky that we have the creme de la creme, but I think that's why, this facility is 24 years old and we're still natural grass. We're still playing that many games on a regular basis.
Right. So those of you that have just heard what Sun said in terms of the hours that they're using those fields for football and soccer and so forth, I take it, Rebecca, that you're not close to that on Martha's Vineyard, right, with your use. Drew, at Brentsville, you're one high school, so you're not serving multiple schools, so you're probably not close to that either, right?
In the spring, we have lacrosse, boys and girls, soccer, boys and girls, JV, varsity. So we probably are 4 nights a week, 2 games a night. Whether that's, again, varsity, JV. In the fall, I'm very lucky to have just varsity and JV football, because that would be hard if I had any more than that. And we are native soil. And I think we've had 2 rainouts on our stadium field in 7 years. And again, that's just because we make sure we stay up to date when it comes to making sure we have our aerations in. And there's another practice a lot of people don't really know, but verticutting, the industry knows, but verticutting is huge. Preventing the development of thatch, which is that organic matter in the field. It allows there to be, the level what Jerad has at the SoccerPlex, where it's being used 24/7 by thousands of people, 365. So that's something that we really focus on. And again, with the number of athletes we service and the time frame, it's definitely up there for any normal high school.
Right. And thanks, Drew. And Jerad, you've already referred to the number of tournaments, and again, I was out there, as I said, this weekend and saw the incredible amount of play going on there. But how would you quantify playability, the number of playable hours on the fields that you have at the SoccerPlex?
On average, through the spring and fall, we're about 25 hours a week. 25 to 30 a week. In the summertime, because of summer camps, per field. Per field. And summer camps in the summertime, the fields we use for camps are We actually, half of our fields are Bermuda grass, so they grow very, very well in the summertime in the heat. Literally grows under the players' feet in the summertime from our summer camps. We use them about 40, we use 40 to 50 hours a week in the summer. But again, it's Bermuda grass. It's growing 100 miles an hour. I mean, it literally spreads under the players' feet. So we'll have an 8-hour session of a camp, 5 days a week, and then we'll play on the weekends as well. So we'll get over, we'll get over 50 to 60 hours, 50. But I will say, I will go back to and kudos to Sun, because what they're doing in a climate that is much more challenging than ours is impressive, especially clearing snow, playing matches, having lower soil temperatures, but I think it speaks to what we're talking about here. You build it correctly, and this is Bruce, this is really, terrific on the kind of the 5 points you put together, because it shows you build it correctly, and they built theirs 24 years ago. SoccerPlex opened in 2000. So we've been open 24 years as well. We've never done I think Sun mentioned she'd done one middle of the field resod in 24 years. And that is a simple renovation or simple Band-Aid fix. Because you get a lot of people trying to say, well, you need to rebuild a grass field or replace it every 8 to 10 years as well. BS. We haven't replaced a single field at SoccerPlex in 24 years. We have improved them. We've changed grass varieties through small renovations that we've done via maintenance. We've never done anything like that either. So you're showing that an investment, and let's say even on the high end that Dr. Goatley referenced the numbers, when you do those square footage numbers, if you build a professional level sand-based field, you may be at $1 million. None of our fields were built for that, not even close. But $1 million amortized over 24 years, when you're spending $40,000 a year to maintain it, or $50,000 a year to maintain it, it's not that much money when you really break it out over that amount of time. It is never, and sorry, I get fired up about it, it is never cheaper to build a grass field than it is, or cheaper to build a synthetic field than it is to build a synthetic field. The only talking point from the synthetic turf industry that comes from is from a report from Montgomery County that came out 13 years ago, that the county council, or that a working group led by field turf representatives or people representing field turf, a synthetic turf company, essentially falsified those numbers. The county council is currently working to correct those numbers because they've seen the discrepancy. It never is cheaper to build an artificial field ever than it is to build and or maintain a natural grass field. It's usually 3 to 1. It's typically how it breaks down when it comes to a mid-level grass field, if you want to build and maintain, because of Sun's, exactly the point she's making. It's terrific to show the longevity of a properly maintained, consistently used natural grass field. And it's the same for us at SoccerPlex, that we don't shut down our fields. We play 16 weeks straight in the spring. We have 6 weeks that we have only camps and no national level tournaments or league play. And then we go back to a 14-week stretch straight in the fall. And we use every single one of our fields as long as there's programming for it. If there's not programming for it, which in the fall, there isn't always full programming. We might have 1 or 2 fields out. That's when we've been doing our drainage work, because we would need to rotate out a field for 4 to 6 weeks. That has changed again. We can't do that because our demand is up. So we had to do the last 2 fields in the middle of the winter on frozen soil because we needed to meet the demand. But that's what sports field managers do. That's what proper landscape architects and or field designers do. That's what people that are properly trained to do this work do. They make solutions, but But a generic engineer or a generic landscape architect isn't an expert in sports fields. They're not. It's pretty easy to build a synthetic field from a designer standpoint. The engineering's the same, the construction base is the same, but listen to what these experts and these professors and these folks have talked about. There are intricacies when it comes to natural playing surfaces, soil type, soil structure, infiltration rates, all these different things. It is science. It's not super complicated, though. It just has to be done correctly the first time. So, son, thanks for your examples, because that is an unprecedented and fantastic amount of play and amount of use. And, you know, it's hard to, and Bruce, for our area, you wouldn't reach those levels of use unless you were at a high school like Son is, because the fields aren't actively used during the day when the kids are in school. So if it's a park like ours at SoccerPlex, it's hard for us to get to 25 hours of use a week because the kids are in school all day. We can get to that in the summer. We can't get to that. We'd love to get that because that's more money that we can make, and that's more money we can put back into the facility. But those kids are in school, so they're not there. They're not coming out to be on the field at that point. So sorry, that was a rant. I just made me really excited.
Oh, that's good. I know.
It was really good. It amazes me and just makes me so excited about this conversation because she really hit it out of the park there.
Great.
Could I just add to that quickly? Sure. Because I know we keep saying it's a science, and it is, and we teach our students for 2 years and 4 years to go on and be successful turfgrass managers. But you can also make a big difference doing very small things. I go out and I do a renovation with my students every year at a baseball field, and I know one of the fields you guys are considering is the elementary school baseball field, right?
Right.
You can make a big difference in a very short period of time for very low cost on a baseball field. That you've got a big portion of it that's infill material, and it's more of an art then. You know, the construction of the mound, the slope of the infield, the levelness of the table. It becomes almost like an art form. But I go out with my students and we can renovate a baseball field infield in 2 days. 2 days. It takes us to take it from an infield that won't drain, that holds water. We can renovate that in 2 days. We get it laser leveled, we rebuild the mound, we reset the bases, we can work on the table. We can turn that field around in just a couple of days. So even though it is an art form and a science, you can make big strides in a very short period of time. And I think it's just because the people that manage these, a lot of people that manage these facilities don't know what they don't know. And that's where we come in as sports turf managers. A lot of people are asking in the chat, how do we get help? How do we get a program? Well, there's people like Jerad out there and Chip, who's gone off now. There's people like that out there, but there's also extension specialists like Dr. Goatley and I in most states, especially if there's a land grant university. They'll have extension people like Dr. Goatley and I. And then the National Sports Field Managers Association have chapters in pretty much every state, so that you don't have to be an expert in turf to have nice facilities. You just need to know where to go to get that help. And there is help out there.
So those are very important points. And I'm glad you're referencing the chat, because there have been a number of questions and we've not answered them all directly. And I want to get to those in just a second. I do want to ask you, Pam, and Mike also, in looking out across your respective states and your experience about the playable hours that we're talking about on natural grass, because you're in places where there are lots of synthetic turf fields as well as natural grass. So you're seeing this debate play out all the time, people talking about how many hours they can play on them and so forth. What's your experience been, first, Mike, in Virginia, about playable hours on natural grass fields?
The majority of the fields and again, it gets down to what type of field that it's built, which y'all have heard over and over again. But most of what I consider to be pretty well constructed athletic fields are in the neighborhood of the 25 to 30 hour usage range from various events, most of them being sporting events. I noticed a comment in there about band. Bands are one of the worst enemies of natural grass fields. And I was in the band and I played percussion, and I played football too. I put my uniform on at halftime. So I come from both sides, but band practice on athletic fields, yeah, I'm not a big fan. So I tell people that do keep that type of thing in mind. But it does come back to, Bruce, if you get a well-constructed field, as Jared's talking about. Jared, do you still talk about grass can take more?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so that's been Jared's slogan for as long as I've known him. It can take more if it's done properly, but that would put you in the range of where I see a well-constructed field easily as handling that. The one mistake that I've seen in my career, Bruce, and my colleagues on this panel have talked about it, is I've seen fields destroyed that were basically native soil with inadequate drainage. They chose to play on it during a rainstorm. One game on a field with standing water can destroy an entire season's worth of effort. And it just blows my mind that they would do that to try to get that one game in. And that's always, again, something I caution people. A little common sense goes a long ways in that type of situation.
Mm-hmm. Right. And Pam, in terms of what you see in Ohio, playable hours on fields, natural grass fields, can you quantify that in any way for us? What's your observation?
About the same as Mike, about 20, 25, anywhere from 25 to 50 hours. I live in a city. I live in a big city, and we're just shy of 1 million people in Columbus. And we have a lot of rec fields, and soccer's exploded. And so they won't rest these fields. They don't rest them. So they play from April through into November, and they have leagues on them every weekend. And I once went to my local rec center, the league fields. I once went down there and I just asked the rec center facility manager, how much of the money that you make from these leagues goes back into the field? And he said $0. So that's what we're dealing with. And so the leagues, some of the leagues that used it were paying money and paying the city of Columbus to mow. And I've looked at some of these programs, and the line items for budgeting at the city level are literally mow, aerate once a year, and overseed in the fall. And that's it. So if you're a baseball field or a softball field, you have to work with volunteers, booster groups, whoever, to try, and leagues, private leagues, to try and get infield materials, calcined clays. So I think that's the challenge, as the usage is very high in Columbus, very high in Columbus. And some people have worked out how to get the money. Ryan DeMay is a good friend of mine, and he always says, find out where the money's coming from. When you find out where the money's coming from, make sure you get some. The usage level is very high, and it just, I know you want a clear answer, but there really isn't one. How the field looks mid and end of season is directly related to the amount of money that gets put back into it. If we're not regularly overseeding, if we haven't installed drainage, if we don't have a program where we postpone, if not cancel, at least postpone games during heavy rainfall, especially on native soil fields, they can get destroyed. It's level of maintenance, communication, the construction of the field. There's so many variables. It's impossible to say a natural grass athletic field can withstand 100 games a week. Because there's too many variables.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, what the natural grass playing field business, or the proposition of a natural grass playing field, is up against is that the synthetic turf industry does quantify it. And they put a number on it. And then schools and athletic programs look at that and then calculate what they can do on those fields, how many programs, how many teams they can support. And that's something that our community obviously is also looking at. It's what our District of Columbia government is looking at. So they're looking at playability, they're looking at cost, And there have been a number of questions in the chat about maintenance. One question specifically asked, Jerad, how many maintenance crew staff do you have at the SoccerPlex?
Huh, what a great question. Not enough. We have 11 full-time people for a 160-acre park for 50 acres of fine turf and another 100 acres of landscape and such. So we only have, that is well below industry average when it comes to even parks and recreation, but mostly, we get compared to professional facilities where most professional facilities will have 2 people per field. We don't even have half a person per field. We have a seasonal staff for events, but we are not, again, we're a nonprofit. So we run lean and mean. That's why we use a lot of technology. We use robots to paint our lines. We use drone images to make our decisions on agronomics for the week. We do a lot of different, we do compaction testing weekly to decide our decompaction program and where we're going to do the work on a certain field to be able to save diesel fuel and staffing hours. So we spend a lot of time to streamline and simplify the challenge to be able to make our labor hours go further because we are a nonprofit.
Right, right. And Drew, you have a student body that's helping you maintain the fields, right?
Yeah, so during the year, obviously I have, the students, which is obviously great. They're helpful, extremely helpful. But starting here in about a week, it's about just me, and some students come and help me sometimes, but during the heart of, when we talk about maintenance, we talk about the aerating, talk about fertility, we're coming into the heart of Bermuda grass, time frame where a lot of that work's done by me and one other person. And we maintain, I think it's close to 15 acres of natural grass playing surfaces with our practice field, stadiums, and everything. It's a lot of work and a lot goes into it. But I think what is important for everyone here, and I know the panelists have different variations of what works for them, is investing in the products that you're using. We talk about infield skins. Pam's talking about the dirt and everything for an infield. Investing in a product that might, withstand more rain is something that you can do, and you can, investigate different products like that. If there's a soil amendment when you're doing a renovation or, your fertility program, a lot of can be invested in that with organics and synthetics and all these different things. But by ensuring you're investing in that, sometimes that counteracts not having the labor. And I also wanted to point out when, Pam was talking earlier and so was talking earlier, when it comes to the actual work and the knowledge for the science and all that, it's not rocket science. Volunteers across the country truly, reach out to us, reach out to different people. I have a vast network of people that I've interviewed and talked to from across the world that are always available whenever you can figure out how to contact them is the best way to put it. But we're out there to help any way that we can because we are advocates for natural grass, and it's something that there are many, many volunteers out there. And I think this project is truly capable because of how many people truly care about this, community that you guys are talking about. And being able to do that is where, the issue of how much maintenance, how many people, it truly can be combated with these different, areas when it comes to managing the grass.
Super. Rebecca, your complex on Martha's Vineyard is comparable to relatively small field projects in our neighborhood. The one project with proposed up to 4 acres of artificial turf is a combined multi-purpose sports field, football, soccer, lacrosse, so forth, and then a baseball field. So in terms of maintenance, what is your staffing and budget at the field fund?
Great question. And there's, like everyone's been saying, not every field is created equal, and that's true even for the different fields that we're helping to maintain. And we invest differently in each field. The ones that host that have larger school populations, using them during the day for recess, PE, and those kind of things, and also host, youth and adult leagues after school and on weekends. We are probably investing, $20,000 a year. Again, this is on the vineyard with an island markup. We are either buying all the equipment ourselves and operating it by having custodians or our own subcontractors do it, as opposed to bringing in once or twice a year. We have some off-island folks come in. This would all be much more affordable, with larger landscaping and turf grass folks available to us if we were on the mainland. But we spend on the higher end about $20,000 a field, and on the lower end maybe $5,000 a field. Like Pam was saying, just mowing with a really good mower and sharp blades and some good aeration a couple of times a year does a big, it makes a difference for a small field, school field that's not seeing a ton of use. That is going to move the needle alone, that alone. But for the higher use fields, we go up to about $20,000. And I just want to make one quick comment about the usage. When Jerad mentioned that the cost of a grass field is typically a third of a plastic field, the turf industry flips that around and they say, yeah, but for one plastic field actually supports 3 times the use as a grass field. This concept of 24/7 use, it's worth it. They kind of try to justify it, but the fact is, like Jerad said, school's in session most of the time. There's only so many hours in the day when youth can use a field, before it's inappropriately late for them. It's after school and in the early evening and maybe later evening for older kids, and then weekends. But there's just not that many hours in the day where these fields are actually going to get used. And clearly grass is able to support that level of use, when it's invested and, maintained accordingly. And obviously if it's, the plastic fields have to get taken offline if you're actually being responsible about temperature. So.
Yeah. Thank you for that. We have just a few minutes left, and I want to stay true to our time. I think we've walked around, if not directly addressed every single question in the chat. Thank you for some of the panel for answering questions that people put in the chat. It's been very helpful. One question, a quick question: how much downtime is required or required? Do you experience a deliberate downtime to let the fields rest during the course of the year? Son, on your fields.
So during our sports seasons, Sunday, that's about it. What we normally get, maybe Saturday and Sunday if it's a lighter week. The question was asked earlier, so we're really busy in the spring and really busy in the fall with our high school sports, but we are lucky in that we have the summer off from high school sports. That's when we usually rent out our facility to some specific groups. It's not a regular usage thing, but we might have some random usage during the summertime. But summer is typically our renovate and recuperate time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Rebecca, just for you guys, any
I mean, there's downtime if it happens, but no, we don't ever ask for it or require it or close fields. They're open for, if they're not being used by schools or youth groups or adult leagues or whatever, they're open for community use. Right. And Drew, you have a summertime when you're not quite as active, probably.
Correct. We have a time frame where I just found out our team won. So we have a state quarterfinal next Tuesday, and then we'll have, if they win, a state semifinal on Friday. And after that, our fields will sort of get shut down. We'll do a little transition out of our overseed back into our Bermuda. And then we have tryouts for football July 25th. So there's like a month and a half there where we can really get into those cultural practices where we're really beating it up to get it to the point where it can withstand the traffic of our athletes. And that's really our downtime. And then obviously over the winter, we use growth tarps to help, sort of combat winter kill and issues that come along with our very unique climate where we have those hot summers and those cold winters. And I know a few people in here definitely use those similar, growth blankets to help with the overall health of the plant.
Super. I need to, reluctantly, I could actually hang with you guys for another couple hours and talk and hear you talk about all these things. And I know there's lots of interest in the community in the chat, but I build this as 7 to 9 and it's now 9 o'clock. So let me just thank all of you and tell you what's next for me. I'm indebted to you truly for taking the time to be part of this. You're not in the immediate Washington area. I reach out to you, call you on the phone, email you, and ask you to participate. And you've been incredibly generous and gracious to join our community and help us. I've mentioned this is the third town hall in this series looking at artificial turf and natural grass playing fields. And I'm recording this one, and I will circulate the link to this recording. I will also post it at our commission website where the other two recordings are posted. The one thing that I would like to do is this: if there's anything that you would like to share with the community, any presentation, any document, any links that haven't made their way into the chat, just send them to me, and I have all the emails for the folks that have registered and participated, and I'll distribute those, or I'll post them at my own website and make sure everybody knows where to find them. Because lots of questions have come up in the chat. And again, thank you for addressing those questions. And Mike, I'd like to, if you wouldn't mind sending me that cost breakdown that you got from your contact in Northern Virginia, that would be great. And on maintenance costs, installation costs, anything that occurs to any of you to forward to me later, please do, because I'm putting together estimates to be able to have those to serve our commission that I serve on, the council member that represents our district in the District of Columbia government, and even the district council. I want to be sure that I'm feeding back to them everything that we're learning. So cost is a big issue, as you can imagine, because people have to budget for these things. Finally, my standard question: is there anything any one of you really wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to say?
I can say something real quick.
Yeah.
Because Bruce, you wanted me to talk to it a little bit when we had talked on the phone. For those that are struggling, whether it's high school or school district, my program is a career and technical education program that we developed, and obviously focusing on the sports fields at our high school because it's readily available. But there's a curriculum behind it, and there's a lot of different components when it comes to getting the programs up and running. When it comes to school district approval, school board members, it's a process, but it's not that difficult of a process that we've helped get other high school turf management programs up and running across the country that has led to similar situations where, natural grass is maintained at a high level by a bunch of teenagers. So again, I'm happy to help any way that I can. And I want to keep it short, Bruce, because I don't want to, take
no, that's great.
I want to put that out there. So.
Oh, well, thank you for that. No, you have an incredible program. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that, by all means, Google, Brentsville High School and Drew in particular, and you'll pull all that up. So thanks, and special thanks to Son Roseline, who not only is the second time she's joined us, but she's been very helpful to me in recommending people for me to reach out to. Son, you're really great for being so generous with your time. So on that, again, I just want to thank all of you enormously for being part of this, and please be in touch. And I say I will share the link to the recording and any materials that anyone sends to me. Okay, are we good, everybody? Super. Thank you so very much. Again, really appreciate it.
Thank you.